Well, hi everybody. Mark Horner here, Beyond 90 Seconds, coming live to you from Snohomish, Washington at 9:03 p.m. Trying something departing from what I've been doing the last few days where it's been audio only, and we're going to try and do some video here with the camera and hopefully bring in at least one guest tonight. So let's give this a whirl and see how it goes. I got to turn down my phone. Did the same thing last night with another phone. So let me catch up on Periscope and see who's in the house here. It looks like Tom is here. We've got Chiwakio. Mark Beamish is here. Good to have you all here. And I'm glad Janine is here. She's moderating, but she's, I believe, going to join us in a guest here shortly, too. So that is excellent. I'm going to move my phone so it doesn't create interference with my microphone there. And at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Zoom because we have the opportunity to bring in a Zoom guest. And indeed, I see someone in the house here. Let me see if I can bring Janine in. Right off the top, Janine, I think you're actually joining automatically. Let me go to Zoom full here. No, yeah, there we go. I'm seeing you, Janine. Let's go ahead and see if we can hear you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing really well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. I should explain to our audience that Janine is on Vancouver Island. We spoke to Janine, what was it, just yesterday morning? About how things are going on for you and your long concerns about COVID-19 and how things as a realtor are happening up there. I guess let's just begin. What's happened in your world related to COVID-19 and its impact on life for you the past 24, 36 hours now?
Well, in real estate, it was hot and now it's not.
Yeah, I was wondering, what can you do? Because I think you mentioned you have to pay like $800 a month for your real estate license, but you're not allowed to show homes. This is not a real estate show, but this is just yet another example of how COVID-19 is impacting lives.
Yeah, that's correct. We're allowed to show homes, but we aren't allowed to have open houses. If we take someone into a house and they catch it, we have certain liabilities. We have to be really careful. So it's really putting a damper on the market, no doubt about it.
Did you happen to venture outside today? I think that you said you had to do an errand. Is that right?
Well, I had a girlfriend go to Costco and she asked me if I needed something. So I got her to pick me up a couple of things. And she came for coffee, but I made sure we were outside in my covered porch. And I got my coffee maker and I plugged it in outside so we could have a blanket and a nice chat in the patio there.
Any word from your friend who's in Mexico, who I think when we spoke yesterday, she was putting on hold the plan. She actually obviously missed her return scheduled flight to Canada. Is she just going to still stay put in Mexico at this time?
Yeah, that's correct. She's afraid to go to the airports because they're so crowded. And she really thinks she would catch the virus if she went there. So she wants to stay safe. She said she'd reconnect with me as soon as she gets to her destination, which is a house a little out of the way. So she'll be safe.
And what about I believe you said it was your 30-year-old niece in Italy who you learned yesterday has contracted COVID-19? How's she doing?
Yeah, she's got a fever and I haven't connected with her yet either, but I meant to do that. I'm going to check in. So next time we chat, I can definitely give you an update on that. And my friend in the Philippines is pretty irritated. He's stuck there. He can't even get a flight now from, he's on a little island. He has to fly to Manila to get out of there and he can't even find a flight. He can't get anywhere out of where he is.
Thanks for the updates. 3 people in your life that are impacted. We talked about them yesterday and you've just updated. Thank you. And also thank you to the people watching on Periscope. Much better is the latest 2 comments after I was getting some comments that the volume was low. Janine, hang tight. And maybe, I don't know if you're able to, well, actually, how can I do this? There are a couple of ways we could do this. What I'm doing is I'm using Zoom, the application, and then I'm also using OBS to live stream, and there are a couple ways I can share my desktop. So let's try this first for you, Janine, so you can see what I'm talking about. Uh, do, do, do. And let's go to share. Here we go. And nope, that's not going to do it. You're going to have to listen in as I show the audience this, Janine. Sorry. But the information is simply text information that I'll be sharing, so that's all good. So I want to get off of that article. We're going to go to that in a moment. Wanted to talk about what's on Twitter, because this speaks to something that I know has been on a lot of people's minds. Dayron, I know you retweeted this. Triple Tall, you shared this with me as well. And so this is Allie Bradley on Twitter at Allie Bradley TV. She's a reporter with Q13, the Fox station here in Seattle. Snohomish County Volunteer Search and Rescue are asking people to stay off the hiking trails and out of the backcountry amid the COVID-19 global emergency. This is great to hear because we've seen so much activity, not only, on the beaches until they recently closed in Florida, but here in the Seattle area at Alki Beach, which is King County. We'll go to that area in just a moment. Certainly here in Snohomish County just yesterday with Wallace Falls, a popular hiking area with waterfalls that's kind of as you venture up into the Cascade Mountains, still in Snohomish County. But let's go to Como News right now on Twitter, the ABC affiliate here. I'm going to scroll down here. First of all, we'll start down here. Here we go. Como News 3 hours ago. And here's a picture that was getting a lot of attention today, one of many. And the tweet here from Como News is, in dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak, King County Search and Rescue is now asking people to avoid hiking so that its volunteers don't have to respond to and burn up personal protective equipment, PPE, in doing so. PPE is getting used a lot these days. It's a common term for folks who are in the emergency services, certainly firefighters, but when they're going out and they're dealing at any time when they think they have a COVID-19, either a presumptive or certainly a confirmed patient, they're going to have their PPEs, their personal protective equipment. So I'm just wondering, Janine, have you seen a lot of these outdoor recreationalists in British Columbia? In the emergency services, certainly firefighters, but when they're going out.
No, I haven't seen too many. It seems like people are behaving for the most part, but occasionally they're out. I think a bar was still open today, and they're all supposed to be closed, but it's not busy at the best of times. Yeah, so I think they're behaving. People are really starting to get the message. I did go out yesterday to buy some seeds to plant, to garden, and there were a lot of people that really avoided me for sure. I mean, they went 6 feet away any chance that they got. So yeah, they're getting the message.
The sense I get from Canada, and we've just been joined by a second guest from Canada. We'll say hi to Christian here. Hi, Christian Saucy. How you doing?
Hi, Mark, my friend. Hi from Vancouver.
Yeah.
Very nice to be here.
Yeah, so we've got two of you from British Columbia. And Christian, just in talking to you as well as Janine, I've kind of gotten a sense that from your perception that there might be more of a consciousness or awareness of the collective good. Do you sense, Christian, that people are being a bit more well-behaved in terms of the social spacing and not gathering on hiking trails and beaches and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think there's a drastic change from yesterday to today. Yesterday, I saw people playing basketball, going out, having picnics and so on. I think what they've done in Nova Scotia is setting a precedent through an example through Canada. That means that they're putting in provincial emergency laws, which actually can, so that they can find people. And I think I hope that young people are getting the message now. It's high time. We're on a very steep exponential curve now, as you know, and it's a very dangerous curve. I also have direct contact to Langley Hospital, which is a hospital nearby, and the messages I'm getting there are changing day by day. So, the wards are quickly filling up, and the ratio of beds, as you know, in Canada is as bad as in the United States. I think it's about 2 to 3 beds per 1,000 patients, which is well well below the average, of developed countries. So that's very worrying. And so if we don't act now, and whatever we do now is only going to be seen in 2 weeks' time. So I find it highly alarming, and I really hope that people get the message now, Mark. So yeah.
I do. I agree. And, there are some comments on Periscope that I can see coming down that I think will fall in line with how the three of us all feel as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kit Harvey in Redding, California, shelter in place. You guys feel like it's time for everybody to stay indoors? And I don't know if it goes as far as using the word lockdown, but it wouldn't upset me if it happened. I'm ready.
Yeah,
Either of you.
it's interesting to look into Germany, because I have a lot of contact internationally. I've just been contacting Australia, seeing what the situation there is. In Germany, they're taking very drastic measures. Any crowd larger than two is now considered, almost law breaking, and the terminology is very subtle there too. If I read the German press, how they express the word lockdown. There's a there's equivalent German. I was talking to a German reporter yesterday, and was very interesting in German actually, and he told me how very subtle the differences are, because obviously, Germany, for example, with the history that they've had, are very careful with how they define the word lockdown, right? It's very subtle, but I think what's interesting in Germany, I find is that you have a population of about 80 million people there, and fortunately, I mean, as morbid as it sounds, but the death toll is very low there at the moment, and I've been completely perplexed why they are doing relatively well. Well, they're all on a very steep increase. Spain is doing terribly, as you know. The UK is not doing well. Italy, of course, is doing horrendously terrible. Those are all, those are not immediate neighbors. Some of them immediate neighbors to Germany, and it's maybe, hopefully it is part of the German responsibility, the way people just are, that they're taking this very serious now, this whole thing. And you come to a shop, they have marks there now where you're supposed to stand, right? That in Canada, it's going to take some time, because the Canadians are so nice. I immigrated to Canada, and they're
Mhm.
always nice, but this niceness can be very detrimental in times of crisis, the same as you have in the United States, where people are so used to their personal freedom, right? And they feel that many encountered, especially in the young generation, as an infringement with their freedom of expression. And we can't change fast enough, Mark. I just want to mention Germany because it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. Maybe it goes similar to South Korea or so. I don't know, but that's just my 2 cents. Okay.
No, I got you. And we've seen in other countries where there's been a bit of a lull and then the boom goes on forward. Let's hope it doesn't happen there, but the odds are pretty much against that, in my humble opinion. I will say that in Spain, I saw a doctor tonight on social media speaking in Spanish, pleading for help and saying how they're having to make the choices that other countries who've been through the worst of it have had to make, and that is 65 and older. They're the ones who are not getting the life-saving treatment. If it's a matter of choosing between two people and the other person's younger, the doctor explained the way it was interpreted, that if they're 65 and older, they will be given a sedative or something to help ease their death. I mean, that's pretty direct. While the other younger, stronger person who's more likely to survive, given that resource, is administered and hopefully saved. Now, you talk about Germany, Christian. I don't know whether you and Janine got a chance to listen to. I think it was just yesterday. Was it Chancellor Merkel
Yes.
spoke to the nation?
Yes.
My goodness, what an address! Did you either of you happen to watch that?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't see it. Did you, Christian?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't see it directly, but I read the German press, and I'm in contact with my sister who lives in Munich.
Well,
So, you
what I was struck by, Christian, sorry to interrupt, but there was no finger
yeah, go ahead.
pointing. There was no finger pointing. There
No.
were short declarative sentences that really laid it down in terms of this is serious.
Yes.
And she did it, I thought, in such a, I guess, a direct way, transparent way, where you've got the full weight. I felt like if you were really listening to her, of the seriousness of the situation without any blaming or finger pointing. And of course, as soon as she did that, just one day later, we learned, I believe, that she was her doctor does have the coronavirus,
That's
COVID-19,
correct.
and so she's under quarantine now.
Yes, well, but Angela Merkel, of course, is a very exceptional woman. I mean, she's highly educated. She's got a PhD in physics, and she is a very good example for how you deal with crisis, because what people need then is facts and guidance and not speculation. So all countries acted too late, including Germany, because I mean, I know myself, I acted far too late. I admit that openly to people. I said I didn't take this seriously at all. No, I didn't. I know. And now I'm turning around. I think what we have to avoid a lot, Mark, now is blaming the governments. I see that so much. Twitter is such a horrible place where when you read the tweets at the moment, they are so aggressive and they are disturbing. I think what we all have to do is take just do the social distancing, take it responsible wherever we can, and stop blaming the governments. We're way beyond the time where we can make the governments responsible. It's not going to help anyone. We have to all individually take responsibility. I don't know how long it's going to take for people to click that, and especially for those who recognize it very late, that we are on a real black wave now. Unfortunately, I must say that I'm usually a big optimist, but I'm a physicist myself. I like statistics. I read a lot of statistics, and what I'm seeing is not, it all tells me the same thing. So,
Christian, Janine had shared something probably at least 2 weeks ago, I want to say, that was really striking to me. Janine had shared that they have this Costco on Vancouver Island, but there were many residents from Burnaby who went over to Vancouver Island specifically to hit the Costco store and come away with as much as they could.
Oh my God.
And she claimed that some people were even dropping as much as $10,000. So I guess you would call that raiding the shelves, or with the hoarding. That's the term I'm looking for. Does that surprise you at all?
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. I find it disgusting, inconsiderate, and that's what I find so alarming, because I mean now people's mentality comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all warrior. You can do it for yourself, but it's losing the big picture. So what can I say, Mark? You're right. It's terrible, right?
Yeah. Janine, on the island itself, you don't have to go too far, relatively speaking, to the mainland to find water, and so therefore perhaps the getting the goods there. I don't know how much of an issue that is in having access to goods. Is it difficult on Vancouver Island right now, from Port Hardy up north down to Nanaimo to the south? Is it difficult, do you think, for people on the island to get the supplies and food they need?
No, we've kept the supplies open. The supply chain is working. I have noticed that there is a diminishing of things like feed for animals. Toilet paper people are hoarding. It's mainly demand that has cleared out the shelves. Although I think now that California's locked down, we may have some difficulties, because if, like the governor says, 56% of the people in California get this, then there won't be the workers in the fields. And I think people are scrambling now to get seeds and think about gardens and everything like that.
Christian, do you have a garden at your home? I seem to recall that maybe you and Rosanna had a garden.
Yeah, we have a small garden. That's right.
I seem to remember that in some of the live streams that you've done in the past. Or
I do lots of my astronomy live streams from my garden. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's take more power to you if you got a garden. I mean, that's fantastic. Let's take a look at some of these other tweets from the Seattle television station. Here's one just 48 minutes ago about German Chancellor Angela Merkel has gone into quarantine. Go down a little bit lower. Gonna skip that one. Towns up and down the Oregon coast and the highways leading to them were clogged with people and cars on Saturday. And this is what we've been seeing here as well. And this is what cannot go on. All these people who do this, who are not doing social distancing, I mean, it's a risk to step outdoors right now. And then to let alone do something like this, what we're seeing in this photo. I don't know how well it shows up for you, but this is going to cost lives. This is not
Yes.
helping to flatten the curve. And Christian, you were very direct earlier. It is absolutely irresponsible. It's hard to fathom. And here's another headline. Both of you being in Canada, perhaps you've already heard it. It's 2 hours at least old now. And that is Canada is bowing out of the Olympics and not waiting for an IOC decision. Either of you have any thoughts on that? Agree?
Well,
Disagree?
my opinion is at least they're recognizing what's happening. I mean, I don't actually know why they're waiting so long with the decision of the Olympics. Of course, it's very painful, right, for all the athletes and for everybody. But how are you going to do all that, even if it were taking place? Look at all the Olympic sports, the traditional Olympic sports of wrestling, fencing, and all the old sports, and there's not and running. There's not one single sport that I can think where you're not in close contact, with your rival, right? That's what the Olympics are all about. And so my thought is, come on, guys, get your act together and let's just face the truth instead of saying, well, we'll decide in 1 month, and we know exactly what the decision is. So I think that's very wise. I'm sorry to say, I
No,
hate
no,
it
no.
going.
I think it's why a great point that you bring up. And I would say to the both of you, I think everybody's kind of got this on one, on one extreme, where people haven't really felt or absorbed the reality of the situation just yet. You still have even skeptics about the seriousness of what's happening today. And then somewhere around the middle, I think you have people who are thinking, well, maybe this goes on for 2 more weeks, or maybe this goes on for 2 more months. But honestly, I could see this going in terms of certainly its impact, but I don't see that we're going to have a vaccine um, prior to the next, fall and winter season, right? Because it's realistically speaking 12 to 18 months. So I feel
Yeah.
like our lives are going to be severely impacted, not just by the aftershocks of the related stock market, world economies, that type of thing, but I think just in dealing with this directly, yes, there may be a bit of a reprieve in the warmer months, but this thing has existed in Australia during the warmer months. It's been near the equator and it's done its damage there. So I'm not terribly optimistic about the warmer weather. But wouldn't you guys say, I mean, in the scope of considering the Olympics, I guess my point is, it seems like a no-brainer to me at this point. As you just said, Christian, no Olympics. It's just not realistic, because I think most people aren't really perhaps realizing just how many months this may stretch on for.
I don't
Am
know,
I?
Janine, if you want to comment to that, I'll comment afterwards. Do you want to say something to that?
I think we're in for a wild ride, and I think people are starting to get the message now, since the governor of California said how many people he thought were going to get it. I mean, there's 25.5 million people in California. He said 56% will likely get it. So that's 12 million people. And then you think it's without the amount of respirators, the death rate is about 6.4. It would probably be around 2 point something, but they don't have the respirators if this happens in that grade of speed. And he thinks it's going to happen in the next 8 weeks. So there's going to be a lot of fatalities, and people are just catching on. I think if they had said that in the first place, I think they didn't want to alarm us. And so people just thought, well, so many people get, I heard comments like there's so many people that get killed by guns in the United States.
Or the common flu, right? Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that, Christian?
Yeah, well, look, I completely agree. I mean, I talked to some of my quite wise friends actually in California, and the opinion there from some people that I really respect in the science world said it'll take 2 winters. 2 winters. One winter, which we're going through now, and then we come into summer, and it'll peak just before summer. It'll go down again, and then comes the second winter, where either we see a mutation of the coronavirus, of course, is a subclass, or the COVID-19 is a subclass of coronavirus, as far as I understand. We could see new mutations coming up, and also until this takes effect, it'll take another winter and then a spring to really take care of this, right? So we're in for a long run here.
Yeah, I think that's just. I'm sorry, Janine, go right ahead.
think we're really close to the boom because
Mm.
4 of my neighbors are in quarantine. There's two a few streets over, and then my neighbor across the road. So, yeah, we're here.
Yeah. I know in this immediate area, Snohomish County, where the U.S. had its first case, and where we're not quite as large in numbers in terms of King County, which has the assisted living facility, which is our local epicenter, that had all the related deaths to it. But still, we've had several deaths here, and I know firsthand that we have many confirmed and presumptive patients right in this area. I'll give you a quick story. I went to, and maybe I shared this with you independently, but I think it was last week. I came home from work and went straight to Safeway to get some groceries, stood in a long line, and I felt uncomfortable. Well, the very next day, I learned that there was a response to I can't recall whether it was a presumptive or a confirmed case, but it was right. I mean, you couldn't be any closer to that Safeway. It was right up against it. 83-year-old woman. And I can tell you, most of the local cases here in this area are older people. They are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I have seen some in the 30s as well. And I think what's been part of a trend in the last 2 days especially is at least the word getting out that, you know what, look, if you're not going to worry about other people as a young person because you feel that you're 100% immune from severe sickness or possibly death, you're wrong. Finally, we're starting to hear more of those stories. And those of us who've been following this since China, we know that young doctors died. We know that young citizen journalists died. And so I think there's a growing awareness now that, you know, young people can die too. So if you're not going to do the right thing to look out for others and stop yourself from passing this on, as you might do even while you're asymptomatic, maybe you're concerned enough about, you know, your own health. I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be something if, you know, the penalty was that you'd get your phone taken away, you know, because everything has a location on it.
Yes,
And if
right.
if it was determined that you were in a crowd and being reckless, you know, maybe that's what it takes, getting your phone taken away, because that seems to be the prized possession. People can't function without their
That's
phone.
right.
So
You're
we
right.
got to hit them where it hurts. That's not probably very realistic, but that's something that came to mind. I was wondering, what does it take to get through to people?
Well, we'll see that maybe after this whole pandemic, people will start walking straight again and not so bent looking at their phone. I'm only joking.
No, I hear you. No, it's nice to have some levity. I think too,
Yes.
Christian. I mean, Christian, you're very reasonable. You've got a scientific background. You know, you got your PhD in physics, and you're very bright in other areas. Janine, you're very
No,
bright. You're very bright as well, and you'll be dismissive about it. But I think that, you know, there's a difference here for people, especially who aren't grasping it quite fully yet. You know, you hear about this word panic, and you hear about panic buying. First of all, I feel my first point is you don't have to have panic. You can simply be prepared.
Hmm.
You can be responsible and you can be prepared. And I will say this too. I think if you go to the store and you want to stock up, as long as you're not hoarding, that's a wise thing to do. I wouldn't just label everybody as going out and panic buying, such as I see oftentimes in the news headlines here and on TV. There's something to be said for being prepared, right? Doesn't mean to say you grab all the toilet paper off the shelves, you know, but you just make sure that you have a bit more to get further into the, you know, the
I
calendar.
just have to tell you a funny story because I was I was in Hokkaido last year. You know, my passion, of
Yes.
course, is eagles and wildlife, and I was very intrigued by the Japanese hygiene and the way they go about, and especially the Japanese toilets. And you know, they have this wonderful water spray and this heater and all these things. So I actually I had one installed here. But now turns out you don't need toilet paper for that. You know?
So it's like a bidet.
It's
Is
just
it
my
like a
own
bidet?
joke. You know? Be prepared, right?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate. Is that a bidet then, Christian? Is that what that
Sorry?
is? Is it a bidet like the French
No,
use?
it's not. It's not that. It's better. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're absolutely wonderful. They have a heated toilet seat. Going into details now, and different sprays that you can regulate. Then comes a heater from low, and it's the Japanese have been cultivating for that for a long time. And I was absolutely intrigued, and I found out you can actually order them here, and so I did. And my wife actually loves it. You know, so
Well,
at first, saying, "Well, what is this nonsense?" nonsense, but once you use it's actually very nice.
No, I appreciate it. Share the knowledge, and this even the personal stuff,
It's
because
funny,
everybody.
nobody talks. Yeah, nobody talks about that, Mark. But it's actually, it saves a lot of resources too. It does. It's you can learn a lot from other cultures.
Well, Janine, there you go. Hot tip: if you're not already aware of this particular type of toilet, being in the real estate business, this might be a nice add-on.
Yes.
um, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yes, Christian, when you were in Japan on that particular trip, and we should describe to people, you mentioned the name of the island, but you were quite north. And I remember you going around and showing the ice sculptures. And again, you were there to photograph bald eagles. And in fact, it wasn't bald eagles. It was, what was the eagle? It was the Stellar
No,
Sea.
yeah, that's right. The Stellar Sea Eagle. That's
the Stellar. And what I was struck by was how, first of all, yes, at that time, unrelated to COVID-19, but many people wore masks, right?
Yes, they did. They did. The Japanese have always been. That's probably why they can deal well with this, but they've always been distant. You don't approach someone too close. Something that we don't do. They don't hug. When you get too close to them, they feel uncomfortable. So that has nothing to do with diseases. So it's just respect. It's the way the culture works. So in times of crisis, they are much better equipped to implement these things than we are.
And what I've heard about the Japanese is that a person will not wear a mask necessarily to protect themselves. It's a show of respect towards the other people that I'm doing what I can do to respect you. You say that's correct?
That's completely correct. And it's the same with handshaking. They don't like handshaking is very uncommon. What is very important, for example, the exchange of business cards is the same as in China, that you look for a long time at the business card to show respect for the person and what they've achieved and so on. But a handshaking is rather uncommon. It's more, you bow. When you go into the house, you take off the shoes and so on, which many people also do here, of course. But it's deeply ingrained in the culture, and it certainly has its advantages also because they talk about real estate. They don't have a lot of them just have mats on the floor and so on. It's a very modest, for us, a very modest lifestyle. But I think in times of crisis, this is, it's much easier to clean and than the problems that we have now.
Something else that's really great insight, and I'll just go one step further in terms of what I remember from your trip, which is not, again, coronavirus or COVID-19 related, but it just speaks to the system and the way of thinking. I was struck by the way and where one walks on the sidewalk.
Oh, yes.
Could you explain how that process worked? Because if you went against these rules, that did not make you popular, as I recall. You had to do it the right way.
That's surprising. Okay, first of all, what's interesting in Japan is they drive on the left-hand side, right? So that comes from, that's obviously from the American and British. So they, not the American, sorry, from the British. They drive on the left-hand side, which comes a bit unexpected. But then when you walk, and especially during the ice festival, they had different festivals there, you walk on the right-hand side. So the one pavement is only the one way. And so you walk up through the ice festival and you go around, but you don't walk against the stream. Of course, me being completely have no knowledge, I walked against the stream, was wondering why is everybody walking this? And I thought, well, obviously, if they have left-hand side and drive in Japan, why would they walk the other way around? I've never found an explanation, and I think the Japanese didn't even notice that they did this.
Well, but didn't they actually have people on some street corners who were, I don't know if they were police, but
and
they
the
were
police said, and oh yes, and the police made me very aware to please turn around and not obstruct the traffic. And also, you're not. And another thing, of course, where the Japanese now score incredibly much is the way they.
Christian? I think I've lost you, Christian. Just a second. Just a moment. Let me see if I can get you back here.
To our internet.
Oh, there you go, Christian. I've got you back now.
Sorry, my internet suddenly disappeared. I don't know what happened. Am I back again? Yeah.
Yes, you are. You're back again.
Okay, sorry about that. It just suddenly disappeared. We had a glitch here. So sorry, what I was saying is exactly like what you alluded to, is they're policemen, but they do it in a friendly but determined way to tell you to move on, do not stand around in the way, so everything moves on. But the other thing is the way they handle their waste and their garbage. I could not find a single garbage can there, and that has to do with the Tokyo attack. Of course, they had a very terrible attack in the Tokyo subways, and since then they have eliminated all that, and they have really reduced their garbage almost to zero, and that's another big advantage that you have when you have a crisis like that, because the less garbage you have, the less likely these viruses are going to transmit and so on. So these are things we haven't even thought of, but there are so many avenues that you can go to improve not only the health of our environment, but also the lifestyle. And we can do with a lot of this packing, this horrible packing industry, and this absolute wastefulness. It's time that we change, and maybe this is one of the signals, right?
Very well could be. Janine, did you want to jump in on anything? I don't know whether you've been to Japan, or whether you've had people who have moved to your area that you've sold homes to from Japan, or maybe, I don't know if you have any insights. I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, but I also wanted to give you an opportunity to have a remark if you wanted to speak to what Christian said.
Yeah, I haven't been to Japan, but my daughter does have cousins there and an uncle that lives there. But and I don't have any clients from Japan either. It's more I would say Chinese and that are clients that around here.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do is show you. Let's go through a story, and maybe we get some thoughts on this. I know my wife was talking just before we went live. She says, "Oh, the Mercy isn't going to come to Washington State. It's a ship. It's going to be going to Los Angeles instead." So here's CNN, and this was at 11:24 p.m. Eastern time, so 8:24 our time, just over an hour ago. The headline reads, "Trump outlines National Guard activations for New York, California, and Washington." And I heard you start to talk there for just a moment. I think, Christian, did you want to jump right in before we read a little bit of this?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so Washington, President Donald Trump said Sunday that the federal government has activated U.S. National Guard units for 3 of the states hardest hit by the novel coronavirus, New York, California, and Washington State. And through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the federal government will be funding 100% of the cost of deploying National Guard units to carry out approved missions to stop the virus while those governors remain in command, the president said at a White House briefing. Trump described the federal government as a quote-unquote backup to the state leaders, underscoring the importance of keeping governors, quote, in command. We'll be following them, and we hope they can do the job, and I think they will. I spoke with all 3 of the governors today just a little while ago, and they're very happy with what we're going to be doing, Trump said. The comments come as millions of people in a growing number of states face orders by their governors aimed at keeping them home to prevent further spread of the coronavirus. There are at least 32,149 cases of the novel coronavirus in the country, according to CNN. The health tally of American cases that are detected and tested in the United States through U.S. public health systems. At least 400 people have died. Following Trump on Sunday, Vice President Mike Pence said about 254,000 Americans have been tested for the virus. He noted that those numbers do not include local hospitals or local labs that have conducted tests. The White House news conference comes hours after New York Governor Andrew Cuomo pleaded with Trump to nationalize the effort to acquire medical supplies at a time when state leaders say they've been forced to compete with one another for essential equipment. Quote, "I think the federal government should order factories to manufacture masks, gowns, ventilators, the essential medical equipment that is going to make the difference between life and death," Cuomo said earlier during a news conference Sunday. Quote, "It's not hard to make a mask or PPE, personal protective equipment, or a gown, but you need companies to do it," the New York governor said. Trump approved the disaster declaration for California later Sunday night, following previous declarations for New York and Washington State. He said at the briefing that in addition to supplies, he had instructed FEMA to provide the following: 4 large medical stations with 1,000 beds to New York, 8 large federal medical stations with 2,000 beds for California, 3 small medical stations with 1,000 beds for Washington. That'd be Washington State, of course. The supplies should be in New York and California within the next 48 hours, Trump said. He added that there will be 2 naval hospital hospital ships, one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast, that will be activated. After some discussion, the USNS Mercy will be sent to Los Angeles and not Washington State. So there you have it. Kind of an interesting decision. I haven't heard the reason why it wouldn't come to Washington State. I could speculate. I imagine it's quite possible that there is a reason that has been provided. That is the official reason for that. I don't know it. I know it's kind of early, but have you guys heard anything? I was speculating that maybe they just don't want to come here because of the prevalence of the virus, but I don't know. But then again, I also think there's been a bit of a contentious relationship between our Democratic governor, Jay Inslee, and the president. Have I lost you guys?
No, we're just digesting that, Mark.
Sorry.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'm more interested. I don't really know what the implications of the National Guard as opposed to the Army is in the States. I cannot comment on it. I'm just watching with, in awe what's going on in the US and how people are going to react like that. And I just hope that there will be reason there. That's all I can hope. I don't know what else to say, Mark. So
no, that's fine. I kind of put you guys on the spot. So the National Guard.
I'm not on the spot. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
It's
so
fine.
the National Guard would be that's a familiar role for the National Guard to go in after hurricanes and so forth to assist. It's not the Army, although they can, members of the National Guard, I'm not certain on this, but I imagine there may be times where they move on to work in the active military given certain situations. But the National Guard is often there to help rebuild, assist, what have you. I think the subtlety of the tones that I pick up here is that you can, when we speak about the concern of panic, and certainly that is something that the government doesn't want. There are those in the American population who would be fearful of seeing military show up, block by block, street by street, and enforcing a lockdown, for example. There have been rumors of that regard, and they've been repeatedly, those rumors have been shot down by our governor and others. So I think that when you start bringing in the role of the National Guard, there's a sensitivity attached to it where the government, to this point anyway, is showing that it's very much in a support role and not in any sort of role that's aimed at keeping you, that restricting your freedoms with enforcement. Does that make sense?
But have you ever seen the National Guard in your area, Mark?
Oh, well, I've seen them driving around and whatnot. Well,
No, more than that, but really taking action. Like I remember when you had this mudslide or so, was that the case for the National Guard or not?
You know what? I don't recall whether the National Guard was up there, and I went up there, but I don't recall seeing. I don't recall seeing them. I know that there are people on the stream. For example, Tony Mayer is watching, and he might have the answer to that. He lives up closer to that area than I do too. Let me go ahead and take this opportunity. Let's see where we're at on what I think I'm still on the article. So let's show you folks again. Let's go to Zoom full. Yeah, we can do that. All right. Let's see here. Some of the comments on Periscope anyway. Victoria TXMD, she made this comment several minutes ago. It was when we were talking about people going out and hiking and packing the trails and whatnot. She countered that by saying that she enjoys simply, and it was today, she was near a stellar jay and distance of bald eagle.
Oh, stellar jay.
Which made her happy, and there was no politics. So it sounds like she was very much alone with nature. And so that's good. It sounds like if you're by yourself, I think groups beyond one, that's what they're discouraging. So of human beings anyway. So it sounds like you hit a home run there. And Kit was talking about Kit Harvey. It's not worth the risk to go out. Deb here in Everett, Washington, near Snohomish, where I'm at. I wonder if peeps think about what they say. We have a flu vaccine and so many still die. Let's see. Kit says, oh no, I'm in California and not happy to hear this. I'm respecting the shelter in place. So that must be her reaction to the fact that people are out and about. I saw a helicopter, it was a news helicopter, I presume, online today showing aerial footage from the Los Angeles area, a hiking area, and yet another place where there were a lot of people on the trails kind of packed together, relatively speaking. So we really can't have this massive leak in terms of, for the virus, we have multiple leaks, right? We may have most people on board, but we've got a lot of holes in the barrel, if you will.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem that way?
Janine, you want to say something?
Oh, it's also shocking. I mean, if you had told me last year that I would be wearing gloves in the, drugstore, and people were wearing masks, you'd think that, all of us, the way we're acting now, or the way that we have to act, they would send us to the psych ward a year ago if we had been acting this way. It's like we're living a real Stephen King novel. And chapter by chapter, here
I
we are.
completely agree with you. I completely agree. That's very well described. Actually, Janine, the way I see it always when I wake up in the morning is, when's this going to stop? Because usually this is what I see on the movies, right? And you wake up and think, this is reality. This can't be. Because, I mean, at least in my lifetime, I've never experienced anything like this at all. I mean, we're lucky we didn't have a war and all these things. But I think this is the most drastic change we're ever going to see in our lifetime in all respects. And nobody quite knows what the outcome is. And by the way, that's also what I find so scary at the moment, is the rise of the conspiracy theories. I'm a scientist, and so I'm very aware of what's going on at the moment on YouTube. The conspiracy theories are having a time, because in time of uncertainty, the speculations just go. And it's amazing how many people there are right now. When I read the comments, I seem to be one of the only ones that said, come on, guys, this is complete nonsense here. But there's so many people. Oh yeah, that makes sense, and so on. And that I don't know if you want to call it gullible. I don't want to be insulting, but I find it very disturbing what's going on, and it nearly gives me a kick to start doing live broadcasts to counter this and take this apart, which takes a lot of effort, of course. It's very easy to propose nonsense, and it's much more difficult to pull that apart and prove why that is actually not the way, right? So I'm seeing the rise in conspiracy theories. I find is absolutely disturbing, right? Because it also people are trying to vent their anger also, and their anxiety, actually, anxiety. Yes.
I think
It's
that.
just,
Go ahead, Jadine. Yeah.
it's like when you're at home alone and you hear a noise. I mean, it's probably just the laundry soap that fell off the washer machine. But for a moment, you think, well, is there somebody trying to get in? Are they trying my?
That's right.
And so you start thinking about all the conspiracy and what it could be, and going to the worst case scenario. And and there was all of the talk about the one world order and all that.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Well, first of all, real quick, let me interject with this. Susan North, watching on YouTube, says regarding Christian being tempted to do a live stream to talk about this and address the conspiracy theorists. She says, "Yes, Christian, we miss you. Come back live." They'd like to see you. I know you have a strong following.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have dealt with it. I wrote a book. I dealt with some conspiracy theorists and beyond conspiracy, just firm beliefs in the Illuminati and the New World Order and all the signs that are built into the designs of our government seals and currency and that can be so it can be exhausting to deal with it just in conversation, and to have to see that out there in social and mainstream media, mainly social. However, the real danger, there is a severe danger connected to it. On one hand, in this particular scenario that we're living in these times, if they think it's a conspiracy and they don't buy into it, they're not going to comply for as long as they can, perhaps. They could also be impacting others to dissuade them from taking things seriously. But what we have seen in the past in other events, like the Oklahoma City bombings, and in some, like the story that I covered, a true crime case, people who have these firm convictions can be compelled to do horrible things, hurting others, feeling that they're doing something in their mind for the greater good. And that's the frightening component of it. And I don't mince words on this, because I know that, things like the X-Files and whatnot, I'm not shooting holes in it, but for the people who just embrace some of the stuff that I mentioned in my list just a moment ago, it can really result in some dangerous situations and outcomes. So I know that on one level, it can be exhaustive to try and talk to somebody for the 100th time about why man really did land on the moon. That's one level, but it goes beyond that in terms of the threat that this can result in, especially during something as severe as what we're going through right now. I mean, I would think that the pressure on those kegs, if you will, is mounting. Stepping away from that, though, you guys, let me just ask you a question for each of you. Christian, you mentioned waking up, I think, or something. How are you two feeling when you wake up in the morning? And I ask you that because when I first wake up, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing this. We're not going outside today, and we've got to you know, got to think of the kids, got to think of the family, got to keep it you know, orderly, calm, all of that. Not let your worries run away. You know, my faith helps me a lot, and that's not meaning that, okay, we're going to die tomorrow and I'm cool with that. I don't think we're going to die tomorrow. I think by and large the great majority of us are going to be fine. But that is something that I lean on that helps me a lot. So I'm just wondering, the two of you, I'll start with Janine. Janine, when you wake up, are you feeling at all melancholy, or how are you finding yourself in the morning?
Well, I'm waking up every night at 4 a.m. and it's like you sit up straight in bed and your eyes are bugged out of your head and you think, oh, wow, this is crazy, and then you try to unwind and go back to sleep. And then I listen to Dr. John Campbell, try to fall asleep. And then I'm texting my friend in the Philippines that's stuck there. And then finally I wind down and I fall back to sleep for, from maybe 5:30 to 6:30. And then I'm up again. So it's really disturbing my sleep.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Hopefully, at those moments at 4 o'clock, you don't dig into your phone and start reading the latest headlines right away.
I do.
Oh no, Janine, you gotta stop that. Wait, get your sleep. Get your sleep, please. Christian, same question
Yeah,
for you, please.
I mean, for me, it's easier than for you, Mark, because my children are not in the house. But I mean, of course, we see the impacts of them losing jobs, the uncertainty, and all that. But talking from the day-to-day life at the moment, it's easier for me because I'm working from home since 2016 now. So I'm for me, not much in the routine has changed. I noticed a lot in my wife Rosanna. That has a lot of anxiety. She's usually very rational. She's an electrical engineer, and she's now working from home, right? And she says to me very often she feels useless, right, because she's not interacting with her colleagues. So I think I see more of her anxiety than my own. I think I've made a massive jump in my head recently when I started realizing that it's the individual that can make a big positive impact here. And I started today also with my first live stream again, talking about eagles and so on, because I thought, well, I was amazed, I have 150,000 followers on Facebook, and I'm posting very, very nice videos now and images, and I'm giving them out for free to give people some comfort and something that they can enjoy. And when I read these comments, I must say I was very humbled by the kindness of many people. So I went spontaneous online, and I had a lot of people. I just spoke and just said, you can take my images, and as long as you don't sell them, just you can print them, do whatever you wish, and I'll be there more often, and I'll run more educational streams. So talking about that, it's actually giving me also a very calm and yet very positive impulse to do more in ways that I didn't think I could influence the community in our difficult times now in a positive way.
Well, it's great that you're doing that. We're seeing on social media a lot of ways that people, I know some musical artists are doing live streams and giving free concerts, if you will, from their
Yes, they
home.
are.
And
Yeah.
and it's great that you're doing that. If people aren't familiar with Christian's Facebook page, it's a wonderful page. If you like nature, especially if you like raptors and in particular bald eagles, you got to check it out. I think I can bring that up. Yes, I can.
Yes.
So this is his page, and it's facebook.com/sassy photo. That's S-A, so it's S as in Sam, SASSE photo, PHOTO, sassyphoto.com. And he's got some great content. He's also on Instagram, and you can definitely find, I mean, look at this. You can definitely find a lot of his work on Instagram as well. And I highly recommend Christian's page. So check it out. And I'm sure you'll like what you see because it's really top-notch photography.
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, and a sassy photo on Instagram as well, right? Yeah. Well, you guys, I have to tell you, Janine and Christian, how nice of you at the last minute to join me. I know I've
Sure.
been kind of battling back and forth on whether to do this. I played around with the computer and set things up here today, and not knowing still all the while whether I'd really do it. Janine, you've encouraged me. I appreciate that. I think it's kind of good to have these social moments. I could totally relate, Christian, to what your wife, Rosanna, is saying. I expressed that at work myself here while teleworking in a morning huddle on Skype with my colleagues. And I was reminded that our division's director had already addressed that topic in an email telling us at this time not to feel that way guilty, for example, because you're not perhaps doing everything you would normally do. I think the focus right now, at least where I work, and I think it's a really wonderful thing to hear when, for those, first of all, if you're keeping your job, it's great, right? If you have some security. And secondly, if you're being told that it's how you're doing that is most important right now and not what you're doing, that's a wonderful benefit. And I encourage that. I know it's not always practical, but man, if people are just, if for those businesses and employers who have staff who are teleworking right now, I think how the worker is doing is a huge component. Daily check-ins, things like that, to have these social moments are really important. So I hear what Rosanna's saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, you're most welcome. I also wanted to share, we earlier talked about the National Guard, and Deb, who is a regular on Periscope, wonderful, out of Everett, Washington, she says, I'm told that if the president calls the Guard, they cannot be used for policing, more to aid than force, or maybe enforce is maybe what she meant. And when she says, I'm told, that usually means her husband, Ray, who is a pretty wise mind as well as Deb. Together, they answer a lot of my questions when I'm live streaming. So again, I want to thank you very much. Before we sign off for the night, is there anything I haven't asked either of you that you would like to add?
Well, I'd like to say, Mark, that this is history in the making. And, to create a blog and how it's impacting you as a person, I mean, we're reliving 1918 all over again. And, it's so important to do this and to remember it. Every day there's something new and crazy and exciting and scary. I think what you're doing is really good, and I really think you should save these videos for yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, maybe the kids will find them interesting one day, and even for ourselves, just to go back and revisit. I know, Janine, I've seen a lot on, I've seen mentions throughout social media among people who are advocating journaling at this time, because as you said, we are living through history right now, more so than ever. Really, that's not an understatement, is it? Or an overstatement. So I think journaling or doing blogs, documenting it for ourselves and for our future generations is a pretty cool concept. So thank you for the support. I really appreciate that, Janine. Thanks. And thanks for coming on it yet again. Christian, did you want to say anything as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think Janine said it very well. I completely agree with her. I think also you have a wonderful talent of communication, a very good radio voice, and just a very nice way of hosting. So I also strongly encourage you to continue. I think as you go on, more and more people will listen in. So well done, Mark.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that speaks to, see, I'm not going to shake your hand, guys. I'm just going to do this. And yeah. I don't know about the elbow. And did you see how Dr. Campbell said he's not really into sneezing into your elbow? He's like, gives this ooh look, and he says,
horrible.
He says, catch it, bin it, kill it, or something like that. So use a Kleenex, catch it, and then bin it, which bin would be the trash can, and kill it. So anyway, Just a wild thought to the side there about all of this. But thank you so much too, Christian, for your support. You've been such a wonderful friend over the years since we first met in, I think, 2013. And it's nice to share this journey with you and have your participation and
My
keep
pleasure,
producing your
sure.
beautiful art and your photography, because I know it brings joy to a lot of people. And we need to keep some focus
Need
on
that.
and I will say this too, being at home, get those moments getting up in the morning. Another really cool component of this, though, is that we're having more time in the sense that we're doing more family things. We're having more meals together. And I know that there's a double-sided coin here where people can get on each other's nerves and whatnot and cabin fever. But there are some neat things happening too. And that's not to be lost in all of this. So again, thank you both very much. And I
And
hope to see you
nice to
again
meet
soon.
Janine too. Very nice. You told me about her and now I finally met her. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great because Janine's on Vancouver Island, and I know that you like
Yes.
to go to Vancouver Island too, Christian.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay. All
But
right.
not for robbing the shops, okay?
Nest right by my house, Christian. So I'll show it to you one day.
Well, it would be a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. Take care, everybody, and I'll
Okay,
chat with
take
you
care.
soon offline. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, fine.
You're
Bye.
welcome. So what I'm going to do as we say goodbye to them is I'm going to bring up my camera here in the studio, and we'll end the meeting on Zoom as we say thanks to Christian and Janine. I've ended the meeting for all. And I want to thank you all very much. Those of you who have watched this on Periscope, I'll hang in here for any last second comments, and I'll just read your final comments to make sure I didn't miss anything on YouTube, and then I'll check, on Periscope, and then I'll check YouTube. Kit, I'm glad you enjoyed the scope. She says, great scope. Thank you. And thank you for all the information, Bo's mom says. This has been informative. Well, that's great. I'm glad there was some good information. And I think in the future, maybe we can share some links to just remind people to check the CDC, and here in Washington State, the Department of Health. And I know, mentioned some other non-traditional sources as well. But we've been following some people, Janine and I in particular, and now Christian, some people who have been on this since January. Hugs to Rosanna, Kit says to Christian. That's Rosanna is Christian's wife. And I'll just, good night, Kit, good night. And I just want to see over on Periscope, YouTube. Looks like Susan is the only one commenting there. And Dr. Sassy, are you on Facebook? Yes, and we answered that question. Sassy Photo, SASSE Photo. And I think you know that, Susan, but it's always good to remind folks. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. If you're catching the replay, I appreciate you hanging on till the end here. And I hope you have a wonderful evening or day wherever you might be. Take care, everybody.